As we get closer to the release of Robert Mueller's report summarizing the findings of his investigation, and by that, I don't mean that we know when it's coming out. I just mean every day that goes by sheer math, we are a day closer to the eventual conclusion of the investigation. We're seeing more and more discussions about how shocking will the report be? How surprising will the content of the report be? And it's important to sort of consider the reality that the report doesn't actually have to be very shocking because we've already had dozens of indictments. We have people that are going to prison. We have the president implicated in a variety of different crimes. But more importantly, the Mueller investigation is just one piece of everything that's going on. You have an entire additional slate of investigations. You've got the SDNY. More importantly, or just as importantly, almost weekly, there are new investigations starting in the House of Representatives now that Democrats have taken over control of that legislative body. And these are serious investigations now that clowns like Devin Nunes are no longer in charge of running some of those investigations. And I have two new ones to tell you about today, one that has started and one that has been requested, and we'll see if it actually starts. First and foremost, the House Democrats in the Judiciary Committee are launching a new investigation into obstruction specifically, but this is going to be a sort of umbrella obstruction investigation that will include Donald Trump's campaign, Donald Trump's businesses, Donald Trump's transition team, and Donald Trump's administration. Why is this so important? Everyone talks about obstruction, but it's often sort of compartmentalized. Inauguration obstruction or pre-election campaign finance violations followed by obstruction to cover them up. This is now going to be a comprehensive investigation that will be democratically led as the Democrats now control the House of Representatives and therefore the various committees within the House. And the big picture here actually could serve as the groundwork for impeachment. Now, I know as soon as I say impeachment, a lot of people are going to get very, very angry with me. I'm not necessarily advocating for impeachment. I'm not saying that if the House filed impeachment articles, that the Senate would vote to remove Donald Trump. In fact, it's likely that they would not. All I'm telling you is that this House investigation is now the type of investigation that could be used to lay the groundwork for impeachment if indeed that's what we're going to see in the future. The political question, Pat, as to whether Democrats should be pushing for impeachment or whether it would be successful, we could do an hour debate just on that, but there's no denying that this type of investigation would at least explore the groundwork for that.
It may also be a hard sell to impeach the president solely on obstruction of justice. When Richard Nixon was facing impeachment, obstruction of justice was a charge, but there were like 4 other charges that went along with it. Bill Clinton, the same thing. It was obstruction of justice and perjury. I don't know if you can sell that to the American people, just a secondary crime, obstruction of justice, but maybe we'll find out.
And we also may find out that there are other crimes that are going to sort of bubble up once you start shaking the trees, or whatever analogy you want to use, metaphor rather. Letters have been sent to 81 people, including all sorts of Trump's associates and family members. They have 2 weeks to respond to these requests. Of course, the lawyers for all of these 81 people and entities will immediately start making a ton of cash, billing hours for their work on these demands. They always seem to come out ahead, but that's what they get paid for. Included in this obstruction probe are James Comey's firing, the catch and kill of news stories potentially harmful to Donald Trump, hush money payments to Donald Trump's mistresses, obstruction related to collusion with Russia, abuse of power, violations of the emoluments clause and possible obstruction to cover that up. And this is going to go on at minimum for months, if not even longer. And as I mentioned in the first portion of today's program, this is the 2020 election, okay? This is going to go on into the heart of the campaign season. And in addition to this, remember that Eric Trump and Don Jr. are part of the new House Judiciary probe. We are also now seeing demands for an investigation into how Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, got security clearances. Congressman Ted Lieu and Don Beyer have put together a letter sent to Donald Trump's attorney general calling for a criminal probe into how Kushner obtained that security clearance. And this is the circle of nepotism, cronyism, and swamp filling that supposedly Trump was going to end. To remind you, Jared Kushner lied on his security clearance forms. It was determined that Jared Kushner shouldn't even have a security clearance. He and Ivanka Trump denied that Donald Trump had any influence on their eventually getting those security clearances. And yet now we have multiple reports that Donald Trump was personally involved in effectively bullying Kushner's way into a security clearance that he never should have had because of his potentially being compromised by foreign powers, including both Qatar and Saudi Arabia. But once again, this is more of the groundwork for showing that the swamp filling is going on. Is William Barr, Trump's attorney general, going to prosecute Jared Kushner? Of course he's not. He is not going to and maybe a better term would be criminally investigate Jared Kushner. I can't imagine that that's going to happen. But I think, Pat, that the Democrats are playing this the right way. If there's evidence that an investigation should take place, you do what you can. If you can investigate it yourself in committee, you do it. If you publicly lay out the evidence in a letter to the attorney general, even though clearly he's not going to investigate, you still do it and you get as much on the record as possible.
And wrongdoing committed by Jared Kushner probably traces back to Trump in some form. We've had questions over Jared Kushner's ties to Qatar and to Israel and to China, and I think Russia too. I'd have to imagine that Trump, Jared Kushner's father-in-law, is also involved in that.
Yeah, involved or just kind of implicitly or deliberately ignorant and standing aside. That's always kind of a question for Trump. And I know that whenever I mention that, a few people will write to me and they'll say, David, don't excuse Trump's behavior by saying he's merely standing aside and kind of the patsy, I think a better word would be. He clearly knows what's going on. He's always so involved with everything that his businesses have been up to. He knows everything that his campaign was up to as well. That may be the case, but these campaigns are far-reaching. And as a merely practical matter, I wonder whether Donald Trump even understands all of the things that people like Jared Kushner were up to. This is going to be what the entire reelection campaign for Trump is going to be like. There are going to be Republican primaries going on, and simultaneously, there will be investigations going on. Trump's son-in-law will be under scrutiny. Trump's daughter is going to be scrutinized for her possible lies. They have only themselves to blame. It's not going away. And if it helps remove Donald Trump from the Oval Office in 2020, then it's all a good thing. Please follow The David Pakman Show on Instagram at David Pakman Show. Behind the scenes pictures, polls, highlighted comments from the audience, and a lot of really great stuff. We'll take a quick break. I will speak next to Alexandra Natapoff about the misdemeanor industrial complex of the American judicial system. I think it should be a really interesting conversation.